We all know that the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it can be challenging to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we answer those questions and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the habits and the mindsets they use to achieve their success. To learn more about our social platform, head on over to www.thestandardapp.com. And now, your host, myself, Chris Pallatroni. All right, welcome to another episode of The Standard. Your host, Chris Pallatroni. And today we have a phenomenal guest, Jono Blodgett. He is the owner of Mauka Makai Fitness in Hawaii. He is a speaker. He is a coach. He's a breath coach. He's a 3-time AG world champion in the Spartan races. He's just a great human being. First got introduced to Jono about maybe a year and a half ago through a mutual friend, Kate Sanders. Thank you, Kate. And he was one of the first coaches that hopped onto The Standard and was willing to share a bunch of his habits and his mindsets. I've watched all of his videos. There are amazing, lots of opportunities to learn there. In this particular episode of the podcast, we just dive deep into one of his habits and one of his mindsets. And even though he is like a super athlete in a lot of ways, his top habit and his top mindset are incredibly practical and really something we all should be considering doing on a daily basis. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Jono. And let's get to it. All right. Well, it's official. It's official. Well, Jono, first of all, thanks for being on, man. I have wanted to have you on, whether it's a podcast or just really dive into your personal habits for quite some time. And you've been such a great supporter of The Standard. I think I've watched every one of your videos a number of times. I think there's a fair amount of things we have in common, but we'll see as we start to unravel this conversation. But first of all, how are you? How are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And yeah, same thing. Been kind of loving the things that you're putting out there, and so I'm glad to help and glad to be a part of this.
Sweet. Well, I want to know, first of all, and this is a little bit of a detour from the questions, what does a 3-time Spartan world champion, what does that mean? Like, I mean, I know Kate's trying to get me to come with you guys to Big Sur. I'm pretty much there. I told her, I was like, I have to not be injured for, 30, 60 days, and then I'll do it. So, I'll tentatively say on this podcast, I'm like 70% of the way there. But what does that mean to be a world champion 3 times over?
So I started getting into Spartan races back in, I think it was maybe 2013 or 14 or so. And I mean, growing up in Hawaii, you were always just outside doing trail runs and surfing and diving and things. And so I kind of just started doing one just for fun, and then started kind of really liking it and liking the competition and the challenge factor. And then it kind of just kept on growing and growing, and I wanted to continue pushing myself and challenge myself. And yeah, before I knew it, I started kind of winning some, and then turns out I was able to win the championship. Yeah, so it's just age group, so they do have another elite division above me. But so yeah, I'm 3-time world champion for my age group. But it's still it's a lot of fun, and there's some really competitive guys out there. And so it's just a way for me to challenge myself continually and keep pushing.
And so for those people that don't know much about Spartan races, and I'll just go ahead and raise my hand here because I ask Kate all the time, I'm like, what am I in for if I do this with you guys? What does it entail? Like, give us just like a broad overview of like what the actual event is about.
It's a outdoor trail run, so always held in the mountains someplace, and that because it's different venues all across the world, really. I mean, they have them all over the U.S., Australia, Japan, Europe, but kind of based on where the venue is, it might be pretty flat, or it might have a lot of hills and climbing, but always a trail run. And then along the distance, and they have various distances, whether it be 3 miles, 6 miles, 13 miles, or even they do an ultra marathon as well. but they'll set up 20 to 35 obstacles along that, say, 13-mile course. And those obstacles can vary from a wall climb to a sandbag carry to rope climbs, barbed wire crawls, spear throw. And then, if you fail any of these obstacles, then they have a 30 burpee penalty. So the incentive is to be able to get through that obstacle successfully so that you don't have to do those 30 burpees. So I like it because it's not just all endurance, say like an Ironman or a triathlon, where you have to have a huge cardio respiratory system. So the Spartan race mixes up a lot of definitely endurance, but then incorporates the strength side as well. So having to carry a sandbag or lift a heavy Atlas stone. So it's much more well-rounded and broad training. So keeps the body strong as well as being able to do the endurance side.
Yeah. Is there one particular, I guess, obstacle that's like, I don't know, your nemesis, or like the one that you like the least, I guess?
The spear throw was my
Okay.
nemesis for many years, and it was one that always kind of got me. I'd be in the lead and come up to the spear throw, and I'd end up missing it, and a lot of times I would end up losing that lead because then you got to go do that 30 burpee penalty.
Oh.
So that was my nemesis for a long time, and I had to set up my own spear throw target in my backyard.
Oh, that's gotta be cool.
I got a couple spears. I almost killed my dog a couple times
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
missing spears, but it just became like, okay, I got to practice, and now I nail it every time, and so it's no longer my nemesis, luckily enough.
Oh,
But
that's sweet.
yeah,
Yeah, I was watching a video on like the obstacles, and correct me if I'm wrong with the spear one. Like it actually has to stick into the straw, whatever. Like,
yep,
okay, yeah, I saw the
yeah. You have one throw, one try only, and it has to actually stick into the hay bale. Or now they're using a foam target. But yeah, so if it just hits it and comes right out, then it doesn't
Oh, I didn't
count. So you have
realize it
to
was
actually
one and
stick it.
done. Oh my lord, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
one and done.
Okay.
So the pressure's on that one
Yeah.
throw.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was thinking too when I was watching it earlier today, that the rope climb, I don't think I've climbed a rope in God since like grade school. I was like, that's the one that's gonna get me. But now it's one and done on the spear throw. I might have to like
Yeah.
set up some obstacle course, and my kids would get a kick out of that one. So
Oh man, it's a blast. I mean, and that's the thing I like. I mean, we used to climb ropes and when we were kids
yeah.
and climbing walls and just roll around and get dirty. And as we get older and older and adults, I mean, we just don't do that sort of thing anymore. But it's just fun to get out there, get outdoors, and do things like we did when we were kids, and just challenging yourself in that aspect and bring out that inner child again.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Um, well, let's dive in. I'm curious to the way that you think about this. We'll get to like some of your like main habits here in a few minutes, but you know, probably more so than most guests that I'll have on this podcast. Like you are an embodiment of like habits and mindsets. I mean, clearly you're a coach, you're a speaker, I mean, you live this life, you coach people on it. But I guess just broadly, as a broad question, like why are they so important to you? Like why even have habits and mindsets? Like forget about a specific one, but why are they just even important to your daily life?
I think they build a foundation for you, and we're humans are very we like we like routine, right? And so if we don't have those habits that we stick to, we're gonna I should take that back. If we don't have good habits that we're
I,
gonna stick to, then we're gonna pick up some other bad habits. And so I think habits and mindsets just create that foundation to set you up for success. And so it's just making sure to build that foundation with good habits, good mindset, so that you can kind of cater your day around these habits that are going to help you to continue to make progress and reach your goals. And so if you don't have those habits, then like I said, it's going to might lead you in the wrong direction, or just, you might just stay stagnant and not go anywhere. Right. So they're a huge part of it.
Yeah, let me dive into that. Is I think of a couple people I know, and they don't build a lot of structure around like positive habits. They're more of like, I'll sort of like bumble my way through life, if you will. I, I'm very aware of the importance of hey, we are very habitual as humans. To your point,
Hmm.
whether it's a good habit or a bad habit, like the habitual part's there. Like we're going to be
Yeah.
creatures in some way. So I'm like, well, man, if we're gonna already be a habit, we might as well pick the good ones. But I guess the question is like, why is it so important to like even focus on like pushing the boundaries of mental, physical, spiritual? Like, I don't want to say like who cares, but why does it even matter? Like from your perspective.
Well, I mean, it does come down to the person, because a lot of people, that they're perfectly fine living that just kind of normal life, and just happy doing what they want to do. There's a book called Driven. I forget the name of the author right now, but he kind of talks about how there's two different types of people, right? There's the farmer side, who they're perfectly content just living, and taking care of their little plot of land, and just having this same thing day after day after day. And then there's the other type, who's more the hunter, who they want to be able to go and see, like, oh, what's on the other side of that mountain. I'm really curious, kind of what's over there. And because otherwise, if they just stay within their own little valley, they might kill all the animals in that valley, and then they're going to run out of food. So the hunter's mindset is always saying, like, okay, well, we're going to need to go explore on that other side. And so it's always, I think, for me anyways, it's kind of taking on that hunter mentality and saying, okay, well, I am perfectly content here in this valley, but what's on the other side, and is what's over there that could possibly help me even to grow even more. And so, yeah, there's those times where you want to just stay content and build on what you have, but then always think about, like, what's in the future, what can I continue to build upon. And so those are going to go in stages, of course, but never, always having that hunter mentality in the background.
Yeah, yeah, I think a lot about that. With so much of the work we do at the Standard, I'm always trying to think of like, how do you make positive change really easy for people. And I think a lot about the fact that a lot of people aren't necessarily seeking the positive change that I'm
Hmm.
hoping to be able to bring to them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with not having, I don't want to say ambitious goals. I'll just put goals in general and trying to push the boundaries. But I do agree with you. I think I think people are perfect the way they are, but I also think it's what makes life fun by, well, what if? Like, what if I could get stronger, or faster, or smarter,
Hmm.
or I could do something that was really hard and I found a way to persevere and make it a reality. I think that's what makes life so interesting and so fun. Um, of just the surprises that we all have for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's one concept. It's called the general adaptation syndrome, that I like to bring up a lot in my workshops. And it's basically, there's a curved line, and we have a line going horizontal, where that's going to be our baseline of where we sit. And kind of what you were saying is, like, people don't have to have big ambitious goals, like, I'm going to go and climb Everest next year, but it's always just having a little goal where you're going to challenge yourself a little bit. And when you challenge yourself, that baseline is going to move up just a hair, just 1%, it might
Mhm.
move up. But then the next time you go out and try and do something, that baseline is going to be that much higher. So you're like, okay, well, you know, I I'm gonna go and climb this mountain, but first I'm gonna start at this hill, and then I accomplish that hill. Okay, let's go to one a little bit higher, and so you just slowly move that baseline up a little bit more. And so it's not about having crazy audacious goals, but at least pushing yourself just a little bit each time to kind of build on that foundation and move that baseline up.
Yeah, I was looking through some of your posts here, and there was one I flagged today, and it really resonated with me because I think about it so often. Um, and you were talking about sort of like people being in a calm state, that life is nice, calm situations all the time. Basically, the idea of like we have good food around us, and the weather is like perfectly temperatured in our homes, and clearly this isn't
Yep.
for every single person. There are a lot of people that do struggle in life, but I think your point was well made in the sense of we seek a lot of comfort, and it you do have to force yourself to be in uncomfortable situations, even if they're really simple uncomfortable
Yeah.
situations.
Oh yeah.
And I think about it all the time because like when it comes to like finances as an example, I'm always like, oh, we got a budget. And it's not that we don't have money to go over a budget. I'm just like, we picked a number. We got to hit the number. Like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we get to the end of the month and my wife's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, we'll eat top ramen. Like, we'll eat tuna out of a can.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not that, and she's like, you're insane. Like, we have the money to go. And I'm like, that's not the point though. The point is that
We set a
we said
goal.
it.
Yeah.
We got to do it. And so I'm always like, yeah, I really resonate with that because I think the other part of your post was adversity hits us all the time. Like we
Oh yeah.
get COVID happened, or we lose a loved one in our family, or who knows what happens. Life happens, if you will. And if you haven't
Yep.
prepared yourself in some way, shape, or form, you might not react to that adversity in a positive way at all. And so I think all those little
Exactly.
micro things that we can be doing throughout our day, even very simple things, can sort of prepare us for some of that resiliency that we're going to need at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. Like with that word resiliency, you nailed it. I mean, it's just seems like a lot of people don't have the grit that we used to, just because we're living in such a comfortable environment. We don't drive everywhere. We have escalators, elevators, and so you're just never put into that uncomfortable situation. So when things like COVID happened, I think that's when a lot of people, their mental health was definitely pushed to the limits because they had never actually dealt with such a stressful situation. But if they would have kind of been doing small little challenging things throughout their lives leading up to COVID, then it wouldn't have been quite so much of a shock,
Yeah.
right? And they would have been able to better handle that mentally, being like, okay, well, I've been through difficult situations before and I've got through it. So it's going to be the same thing with this. COVID was a difficult situation, but you find ways to continue on and continue to make progress, even in that discomfort and the, awkward times.
Yeah. Last thing here, we'll dive into your habit here. I mean, this is why I love, and I know I don't do Spartans yet, but I've run a
Yeah.
number of marathons, and I think any grueling endurance event, it could be cycling, it could be swimming, it could be anything. Um, if you've done them enough, you start to realize they're physical for sure, but there's so much
Yeah.
mental components to it as well.
Mental.
And I will
Oh
never
yeah.
forget my first marathon. And I mean, I think it was like mile probably 13 or 14. I'm like, why did I do this? Like, I've got
Yeah.
13 more miles to go. And like, and it's a simple no, but but that no is just like for in a second, and they just constantly just barrage your brain as like, why am I doing this? And they hurt, they're painful. I mean, who knows what happens? There's a cramp, you might throw up. Like a lot of different things can happen in these events. But what I've learned over the years is like it's the mental capacity to be able to be in an uncomfortable situation and push yourself through and realize like you didn't die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was painful, but my God, like it was painful on mile 13 and you made it to mile 26, or obstacle
Yeah.
one and you made it all the way through. And I think that at least what I took out of the first one, and I run a number, is that like you carry that over to your personal life and to your business and to your work and to your relationships. And you
100%.
start to recognize that, like, dude, like I can be in uncomfortable situations and still thrive. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to feel
Yeah.
really comfortable for me to be able to persevere through that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I tell a lot of people when I talk to them, and they say, "Well, I'm never going to run a marathon. I'm never going to do these endurance." So like, how do I get that same kind of mentality, even though I'm not going to go out and push myself to extreme endurance events? And I mean, it's just having a difficult situation, once a day, once a week or something like that, putting yourself through a cold shower where, it's miserable at the time, but you're still in a safe environment. You're not dying. You can it's that mental side where you're building that mental toughness, the resiliency to be able to, even though your body's telling you to, like, I don't like this. This is not, what our normal is, but having that mental stamina to continue to push through and accomplish something, even if it's just for a short bout, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Kate's always trying to
Yeah.
get me to do an ice bath, and I think I have a mental block on it. I think I've done it once, and I'm like, I swear I'll do it again, Kate. I promise. Well, let's dive in. I mean, I've watched every video you've posted onto the standard. I'm sure you have other habits and mindsets, but let's start with a habit. And clearly, we won't have time to go through all of the different habits that you have. But with you being so focused and obviously very athletic, like that's a huge part of your lifestyle. I'm curious, like, what is like the habit that is the single most important habit for your success, your mental health, your wellness? Like, what is that from your perspective?
Definitely for me, I mean, it's been any sort of movement with the physical body. Maybe that's just because it's something I've done my entire life. But it's just getting out and moving the body in some way or another. And it could be a really difficult workout, or if I'm not feeling so up for it that day, it might just be sitting out in the grass and just stretching a little bit, or it might be going out and doing something a little bit more fun with some friends, maybe surfing or hiking or, just taking a walk on the beach. But definitely getting outdoors and moving the body has been one of the habits that I try to stick to. I have been able to stick to for many, many years, and what's helped my mental health, definitely, especially during COVID. I mean, it was so difficult to get outside. A lot of places they were restricting it, but I still tried to, go to places where there weren't going to be anybody around, so I could still get outdoors and move the body a little bit. Because I think movement just gets the blood flowing, gets ideas flowing a lot more, and just helps with that mental aspect to take your mind off of the stress of kids and work and everything else that's going on in the world. And just really kind of focus internally on how you're feeling and the thoughts inside your head that you can kind of work through during that process. And so the physical side has been one of the habits that I stick to at all times.
You mentioned a lot of things there, from maybe it's just you, maybe it's a simple stretch in the grass, maybe it's a more intense workout. Is this daily for you at this point? Like, is this a habit that you use on a daily basis?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, there's going to be some days that I'm not in for like a big workout. So, okay, this is going to be one of those days that I'm just going to just do some stretching, or even just a light walk, taking the dog for a walk around the block just to get outside and get some movement. And 100% every time after I'm done, you feel way better. And so it's just getting outdoors, or, even if you can't get outdoors, just doing some stretching, doing some movement, and moving the body always helps that mental side of things.
So let's pick that apart a little bit. When you say like days you don't feel like doing it, I just want to recognize for listeners, like, Jono, you're an athlete. Like, you live in a beautiful part of the world. I mean, it's hiking, it's running, it's underwater push-ups. I mean, it's you've got everything going on here. So I guess the question is like, when you think of days you don't feel like doing something, how do you judge whether that's truly a day you need to take it easy, or a day where you're, I guess, just being a little weak in the mind and you just need to like go there? Because I run into this issue. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
God, I got this 13-mile run today. Like, do I really not feel 100%? Is it? So how do you decipher when you really should be taking it easy versus, no, I think I'm just coming up with excuses, I need to push through and do that? maybe harder exercise or activity that you
That's a that's a great question. Yeah, because there are those days where you're like, my body just really doesn't can't handle a big workout, and then there's those days where you're like, no, you're just making excuses, like suck it up and get out and get it done. And what I've found is on those days when I might be making excuses, I'll go out and I'll still just kind of maybe do some light movement. A lot of times, once you start moving, then you're like, okay, yeah, no, now I'm ready. I can do this. And it might just, and the hardest part is always, they say, is like just putting on your shoes to go out for that
yeah.
walk, right? So a lot of times, if I'm not in the mood for it, just okay, let's just put on my shoes and just start doing something. And then as you start doing something, the body wakes up a little bit, you start to kick up those endorphins, and then you're like, okay, now I'm feeling good, now I'm ready, let's push it. Or you're like, yep, no, my body's not feeling it today, I'm just going to keep doing kind of these slow movements, stretching or walking. That's going to be better for what I need on this day. So, but it's a lot I mean, you just got to go and test it out sometimes, and get out there and see how you feel. And then, if a lot of times, if you're still making up excuses, that's when the accountability factor of calling up a friend or something, and getting them to help kind of motivate you, because a lot of it is doing it by yourself is difficult and you don't want to do it. But then if you have a friend that comes out and be like, all right, hey, we can do this, like, let's go, they'll push you a little bit, or put in on some music that you really like. If you're just starting to kind of warm up, get the body moving, and then a song comes on that you like. I mean, music is a huge kind of motivator for a lot of people. So, that song comes on and you're like, okay, now I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
I can do a little bit more. And so using those external factors to help you through those difficult situations, those difficult times when you might be making excuses.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to
So
put on I call it like Positive Mojo. I would download like some phenomenal, like motivational videos. Like I sort of got tired of music because I'd run so much, so that I'd find like these
yeah,
5 to 20 minute, sort of like collages of like great quotes and snippets. And then I'd like sort of mash them together in this hour. And then I'd listen to it like almost on repeat, almost like positive, just like brainwash of just like just
yeah,
pump it into your brain.
yeah,
It
yeah,
always get me going. But I took a similar philosophy to you. Is like, look, if I said I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. But I still struggle with like, when do you pull back versus like, am I just being soft, or do I need to like actually take it easy on my body? But I would do the same thing that you're saying, which is just put the shoes on. For me, I'm a runner, run around the block. And look, if I get a block, 2 blocks in, a half mile, a mile, and I really want to quit, hey, dude, turn around, go home. Like there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with that. But you got to make it to that half mile to the mile before you start
yeah,
to concede. And then to your point, I mean, you're already out there. I mean, usually the thoughts go away and you're in the flow.
yeah. I mean, and your body well enough where there's the times where it's just like, I know if I'm just kind of warming up, and you, the body's just not feeling it today, like, okay, it may not be good to do a 13-mile when the body's already beat up. This would be a day better just for recovery, and doing a quick little yoga session, or maybe a swim in the pool. A lot of the water's going to help with the recovery and wake you up a little bit. And so it's just learning more about the body. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't know nowadays, is they don't know how their body's feeling, because you're just in the same set standard all the time, right? You just wake up, same environment all the time, going through the motions. And so they don't understand what a truly difficult situation is versus something that maybe just be, a little discomfort. And so it's teaching people how to gauge that, and so they can understand it better, and move that baseline a little bit.
Yeah, and for anybody that's not, I would say that is sort of new to like consistent body movement. Accountability partners are huge.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
can't recommend it enough. There's power in numbers, and nobody wants to let anybody down. And so it's a great pull to get out of bed. And it's actually why I go see Kate all the time for physical fitness.
Yeah.
Cause like I hate working out. I love running. When I was like, dude, if it was me and just to go to a gym, like, I mean, I would probably be one of the weaker habits I have. I'd be, dude, I got something to do. But hey, Kate,
Yeah.
not only am I paying her, but I got to show up. She's expecting me, and I tell her all the time, it's like I don't want to think in there, but also I need somebody to hold me accountable. So it's a great dual thing.
I mean, humans we're a tribal community people, and so we feed off of other people's energy. And so by having a place to go to where there's going to be somebody that's going to be pushing you and leading you in the right direction is huge. So, but then as the same thing goes in the opposite direction, there's a lot of people who are spending time with people who are leading them in the wrong direction. And so it's picking and choosing the people you spend time with, right? They say you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So, who are you spending time with? The people who are motivating you and pushing you and keeping you accountable to do things, or people that are dragging you down and leading you in the wrong direction?
Yeah, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. That's a
there you go.
real thing. I do a lot of trainings at my company, and we talk about environment, and I think people are a huge part of your environment, right? You will naturally, because we are a social species, you will absolutely become like those people. If they eat healthy, you'll eat healthier, right? It's not to say you'll mimic them perfectly, but yeah, you do want to be very thoughtful of who you bring into your life and who you keep there. Are they a positive or a negative? To finish off this habit, I do want to sort of glaze over the physical component to it, because I think a lot of listeners can probably imagine moving, what that will do to your body. There's weight regulation. There's a lot of positives. I think people will naturally do that. I want to talk a little bit about like the mental side of it. And so from less of the physical, but like just more of the mental, maybe even the spiritual side, like why is movement so important? I mean, you mentioned a little bit of it, but I mean, I know you do breath work. I know you coach people. There's something I'm trying to tease out of you too that I want to make sure we talk about, because I think it's actually really important. But I'd love your perspective on the mental side of why movement is so critical on a daily basis.
I mean, I think, like I kind of said earlier, it forces you to focus on what's happening within your own body, within your own mind. We're so distracted nowadays with social media, what's happening, there's news and what else is going on with jobs and kids and things, that we don't actually turn internally and think about our own feelings, our own emotions, how our body is feeling. And so just getting in that movement, I think movement and breathing, kind of come back to the breathing. I mean, people don't think about their breathing. They don't think about what's happening. And it's an autonomic action that we do, but if we actually just stopped and took a few deep breaths, what's that doing? It's focusing your thoughts and emotions internally on what's happening. And a lot of times just that's what people need nowadays. Just like, okay, let me just stop, kind of take a few breaths, think about what's going on internally, and like, okay, am I a little anxious today? Like, what do I need to do to help with that? Or, am I a little tired? What's going on with that? Or happy if I have a lot of energy. Okay, let's use that towards our advantage and go and do something that you may not have the energy for on another day, but hey, today I'm feeling good, so I'm going to push it a little bit harder. But I think just movement brings out that aspect of focusing the energy internally and being able to then reassess and move forward in the direction whichever that's pushing you.
Yeah, it's also so good to like lower your cortisol levels, reduce stress, anxiety. This is your habit, but and I think this plays a huge part as to why you live where you live in the world. But nature, like, my God, Jono, like I see all your videos. I mean, like, I'm super jealous because like I don't have any of that around here. I've got the same. I mean, I live in a beautiful part of the world, and beautiful state park in our backyard, but nothing to like where you live in Hawaii. Um, I have to imagine that nature has such a profound effect on you from a mental perspective. I mean, most of the stuff you're doing is outside. I've watched a couple of videos of you talking about go in the gym or go outside. And so I think I know your
Oh yeah.
stance on like the two of them. And I'm the same way. I'm like, that's why I garden. I'd rather be outside all the time. But nature has such profound effects because nature is so novel. There's so much awe in nature. And I think it does really help recalibrate your thought process. It helps with the way you think. It definitely brings out creativity. We rarely have our
Oh yeah.
epiphanies at our office. And, a lot of these things can be worked out subconsciously by just going out there and enjoying the world for what it is. And so I'm curious, like, I got to imagine nature is such a huge part of this for you as well.
Oh, I mean, it's massive. I mean, growing up in Hawaii, we were always hiking, surfing, free diving, doing everything outdoors. But if I'm ever having a bad day or anything, I mean, being able to go on a hike and or go for a swim or anything, like you come out and just feel a million times better. And I always kind of relate that to people. I'm like, yes, movement is good, but what's going to be better for you if you go to a gym and you're on a treadmill and there's, the news is playing in the background and it's just having all these negative thoughts going on in your head, and then there's just loud music playing or something like that, people distracting you, people getting angry because you're using the treadmill that they wanted, or I mean going outside and having sun hit you, and or even if it's raining, just having those outdoor elements kind of come in contact, you're being with nature, and then you're not having all those other negative aspects flying at you from all directions, and just breathing better, like more fresh air. And I mean, there's ends and end, the list can go on, but I mean, they've done so many studies that being outdoors, it helps so much with depression and all kinds of anxiety and things. And so you're more you're going to more likely to continue a workout exercise routine if you're doing it outside versus if you're going to the gym. I mean, they've done countless studies on this that, it's just more enjoyable being outside. And so that's definitely one of the habits that I try to stick to. And I even tell people, I mean, my sister lives in Colorado. She's like, well, it's cold outside. I don't want to go outside. And, there are difficult. I mean, I live in a beautiful place where it's gorgeous kind of year round. So it's definitely easy for me. And I won't say, living in cold environments, there's days when, yeah, you just don't want to go outside. But on those days when it is somewhat, nice or not a blizzard, throw on a jacket, throw on a hat, throw on some gloves, and just go outside, take a walk, and breathe that fresh air. Look at the trees and the sun or lake or anything, and you'll come back feeling just a million times better.
Yeah, nature perspective is so huge, and I would even argue. I mean, at Colorado, I don't experience the cold like that, but in Sonoma County, man, there's run days where it's like 40 degrees and pouring rain outside, and I'm like, I
Yeah,
said I'd do it today, I'll do it, and it's not
yeah,
enjoyable. But going back to that resiliency component, you don't have to want to do it to be capable of doing it. And I do think like in
yeah,
those moments, like sure, I'd love a sunny day, it's 70 to 80 degrees, and just go running, but hey, I can run in the rain, and there's beauty in that as well, right? Like there's
oh yeah,
you could experience and like feel alive, right? It's going back to that comfort thing we started off with, is like I don't need it to be like the perfect temperature to always like get the perfect run. It's like, hey, today's a day, it's almost hailing outside, but we'll get it done either way. So
yeah. And it's just going back to that baseline, that general adaptation syndrome. I mean, if you're always looking for that perfect day to go out and do things, and some places that might only be a couple days a month. So it's kind of forcing yourself to, like, okay, it's not ideal, but I'm still going to go out today and do something. And then over a couple months of doing that, you're like, okay, well, yeah, that wasn't so bad last time I did that, so I'm gonna go out and do it again. And then you're going to start doing that on the regular. And so even on, like you said, hailing days, you're like, okay, this is still, I'm not going to die. It's going to be a little uncomfortable, but you're still getting out there and doing it.
Yeah, it's doable. So obviously movement's huge for you. There's a physical component, there's a mental component. Let's flip over to like mindsets. Is there a particular mindset that you really embrace that really has like helped you as a person, maybe on the mental health or just success in general?
The mindset that I kind of adopted probably about 10 years ago was just continued learning. There was probably up through my 20s and 30s, I was still successful and doing things a lot. I used to be a marine biologist, was my education days, and I was able to move up the ranks in this organization, and but eventually I wasn't able to continue growing in things, and I eventually lost my job to somebody underneath me, which that kind of kickstarted things and said that, okay, like I obviously got a little complacent here in thinking that I could just go through life just doing the normal thing day after day after day. And so at that point, that's when I was like, okay, I need to keep growing. I need to keep learning about anything new that's going to help me to be better as a person all around. I mean, and so that's one mindset that I've taken on, and it's learning about physical fitness, about nutrition, about finances, about love and relationships, and just how to be a better person all around. And so there's so many different things out there, and to be a well-rounded person, it's difficult to learn everything, of course, but I think just listening to podcasts and listening to audiobooks and things, and just always having that mindset of, okay, let's just keep learning. Like, what can I learn about today? And just have the goal of every day just learning something new, whether it could be something really small, but always having that mindset of continued growth and continued learning.
When did you really develop that? Was there a particular age or time where you really embraced that learning concept?
It was probably my early 30s,
Yeah.
maybe 33, 34 or so. So it definitely wasn't, it's not like I was born with that and brought it on early. It was kind of more as I started to age and mature a little bit. And I think I started to see and take notice of the people who were stagnant and kind of noticing what they were doing, or maybe the lack of doing.
Yeah.
And so that kind of clicked it on in my head. The little light bulb went off saying like, okay, let's continue to learn how I can improve on myself and build on that foundation and continue to grow.
Yeah, I was about the same age too. I mean, I'd always
Yeah.
been pretty successful, but I didn't start getting into like really consuming knowledge until about my early 30s. And man, I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, "Ah, if there's
Yeah.
one superpower I could, because they always play these games. They're like, Dad, if you could have any power in the world, would it be flying? And I'd be like, dude, I wish I could learn information faster. Like if I could
Yeah.
just download books into my brain and podcasts, I was like, oh my Lord. Because the more you learn, the more you realize how little we actually know. It is
Oh yeah.
mind boggling. You think you know something and then you read a book, and I mean, I'll go 10, 20 books deep on a topic and I'm like, there's so much
Wow.
more about
Yeah.
this topic.
Oh
You're just
yeah.
like, it's endless. Like there's not enough time in my lifetime to really like learn all the things I want to learn. I can go to a certain level, but then I have to pull back. So now I was about the same age.
Well, I think it also just it opens you up to different views and different perspectives of what else is happening in the world, right? And you may not have even thought that I don't know, piano was your interest, or and music was your interest, but like, hey, I'm going to go to a a symphony or a concert that I normally wouldn't go to, but hey, I'm going to learn about something new today. And then comes to find out, I mean, wow, that was amazing. I want to take up piano lessons now. Like, that was so impressive. Like, you expose yourself to different environments and different situations, and that's just how you learn.
Yeah. So let's get a
Yeah.
little bit in the weeds on this one right here. So I guess a couple questions, and I'll give them one at a time. Is like, how do you pick the topics? Like, I know you spouted off a couple on relationships, and I know you do breath work, but like, how do you choose what it is that you want to learn more about? How does that come about for you?
I mean, a lot of it's going to factor into what's happening in your life at that moment, and I think that's the way a lot of people are. I mean, if you're going through a difficult relationship at the time, that's when I'm like, hey, I'm going to put on a podcast and maybe see what other people say about this, and maybe that will help me through that difficult situation that I may be having with a partner or spouse or things like that. Or, maybe I am wanting to save for a house. So, hey, I'm gonna listen to some podcasts or read some audiobooks on or listen to some audiobooks about finance for this week or this day. And then, or hey, I'm wanting to lose some weight right now, or I wanted to gain some strength right now. So for the next couple weeks, hey, I'm going to really dive into this. So a lot of it is catered toward what's going on in your life at that moment. And but I think doing that, it then you create new ideas and new things come about. And so one thing, that relationship aspect might spawn off into like, okay, well, hey, your relationship may be struggling because you're not, maybe you are out of shape or something like that, and maybe you put on some weight, and so maybe that's causing some issues with the finance if you're going out to eat a lot and things. And so maybe that's one aspect of it. And so it's all kind of starts to circle and intertwine with each other, and so you start to see the connections between each of those things and be like, okay, well, if I improve upon this factor, then that's going to help me kind of bring it into this other side of things as well. And so you kind of all starts to snowball together is what I found.
No, that makes sense. How do you determine how you'll take in the information? I talk to a lot of people, and I'm always preaching. I'm like, you should read more books or listen to more podcasts. And clearly you do both of those. I'm sure there's some other mediums you use as well to learn. But a lot of people will tell me, they're like, I don't have time, man. Like, I got kids, like I got the day job. Like, so I guess for you, you've got a lot going on. How do you choose the medium to take in the information? Like, when do you go to a book versus an audiobook versus a podcast versus an article versus maybe you're actually going somewhere and listen to a speaker? Like, do you
Hmm.
consciously choose that stuff to like organize it around your life, or is it sort of just happen?
No, I definitely choose
I knew you'd say you
which
chose
medium
it.
I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to. It's definitely, otherwise, if you just play it to chance, a lot of it's never gonna happen, right? So I do a lot of driving, so I'm always putting on audiobooks or podcasts or something like that. And I tell people, we're like, well, I have kids in the car, I have to listen to whatever they want to listen to. I'm like, well, there may be 10 minutes where you drop the kids off and then you're driving to work in that 10-20 minutes or half hour, and so that's when you switch on that different audiobook. But I like to do like a normal reading of actual hard copy book right before I'm going to sleep, because that just helps me kind of, one, just take my mind off of work and whatever else is going on, and just get away from any sort of like visual aspects, like reading it on a Kindle or
Mm.
something. The blue light they've shown, and is going to keep your brain activated, and then reduce your chances of falling asleep as easy. So just having a hard copy book is when I usually find that to be the best. And if I'm doing a reading before bed, it's not going to be something that really engages and activates my mind. It's going to be something more like I like to read a lot of autobiographies before bed. So it's just a a story of someone's life on what they're going through and how they overcame things. And so a lot of those autobiographies are very motivational in that aspect as well, but it's not something that's really going to get the brain thinking as well, unless if it was like a finance book that where your brain is just going crazy. So and then like the other aspect too is like those in-person trainings that you can do with people. That's one of the best that I think by far, is just so you can really see the person's energy and their excitement and ask them questions about different things. And then they can then show you in person, a little bit, say if it's for, a physical movement aspect of a yoga, you can go and do a yoga pose and the instructor can walk you through better how to do it and go over the breathing aspects that a lot of times you wouldn't be able to do if you were just listening to from an audio aspect or reading it from an article or a book. So those in-person trainings are some that I try to do at least once a quarter, and going someplace and using that as motivation to kind of broaden your horizon in that aspect.
What I love about the way that you said that is, obviously we're talking about a mindset, but clearly, mindsets and habits are intertwined, and there are very habitual things that you do. You're driving, you're listening to something, you're reading something before you go to bed, but you're very intentional about the type of content you're taking in at specific times, which I think is really critical, because I feel the same way. I've tried, could I listen to an audiobook while I run? And I was like, no, I like to type notes. That's just my thing. But podcasts are phenomenal while I run. I feel like it's a little bit more creative. It doesn't force me to take as rigorous notes. So finding the right content to consume at the right time, I think is really critical.
Yep.
And I think people forget how powerful 5 to 10 minutes can be, right? Folding laundry, or, every 4 days a week, I go see Kate. That's a 12-minute drive to Kate and a 12-minute drive back. That's 24 minutes times 4 days a week. Like, I'm listening to
that adds up.
It adds up. And so I think that, but what I love about this being a mindset is, I remember a couple years ago, I read maybe like 10 or 15 books on learning. I wanted to learn how to learn. Had a system, but I was like, look, what are all the experts? What's the science say? And not shocking, but noteworthy, is a prerequisite to learning is wanting to learn. And so it's interesting the way you talk about this is you want to learn, and thus you will find the lessons to be learned. You're paying attention. And I think that's really important. It's not just go find a book. Like, you have to want to learn the information. The students, the teacher appears when the student's ready. It's very much that. And so it's hard to just tell people, well, just go learn. It's like, it's not exactly that easy. It's you gotta want to learn something. You have to have that curiosity, which is why I love the fact that this is a mindset for you and not necessarily just a habit.
Yeah, I mean, you think too. I mean, TVs and all the Netflix shows that are out now. I mean, it's learning to, like you said, wanting to learn. Like, okay, I'm gonna have to turn off my TV and not watch the next episode, a half hour before I normally go to bed, and instead actually, like, hey, I'm gonna turn the TV off and actually just go and lay down and read a book. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Unfortunately, it's that immediate gratification of, hey, I just want to sit here and watch this show and not do anything. But you gotta think, then that one episode usually turns into 2 episodes, and then just getting all that blue light and not sleeping, and then that ruins you for the next day. And so then if you're not getting that sleep, then your willpower for the following day goes down even more. And then if you're trying to train for something, or if you're trying to lose some weight or something, and that willpower is knocked down, you're like, okay, yep, I'm too tired today, I'm not going to do the workout. Or, yeah, I don't feel like cooking, let's just go get some takeout. And then it's just a downhill slope from there. So it's interesting things, like, people don't think, like, how this one little change, of half an hour or so, turn off that TV, getting to sleep at a good time can set you up for so much more success, that whole week. And then that week leads to months and years. And before you know it, then you've made leaps and bounds to where you would have been the year before.
Yeah, and I'll just say this too. I think sometimes people think success is always monetary or some sort of prestige, but in a lot of ways, like for those out there that are looking to like push the boundaries, success is less stress. It's
Yeah.
feeling control. It's it's just knowing that like you're in the driver's seat. I don't think it's like in a lot of ways it doesn't always mean more money. It just means like
Yeah.
so just to clarify on that. As we get to just the last few minutes here, I got a couple of like rapid fire questions for you here. Is there a particular habit or mindset that you have been wanting to develop but isn't solidified yet right now for you that you're working on?
Yeah. And it's a habit. I don't know. My mom, she was a very driven woman. I mean, she was the director of nursing at a hospital, and then she started up the University of Phoenix campus here, and then went on to get her PhD and wrote a book and did all these things. And so I definitely, growing up, saw how hard she worked. But one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed and commended her for was she always made sure to have fun as well, and dressing up for Halloween and going out with her friends and doing all kinds of things. And that's one habit that I've noticed over the last 10 years that, yeah, I've become more driven in the fact that I want to succeed as an athlete and succeed in business and doing all these kind of other things that I've often kind of put the fun to the side. And I think that's one habit that I'm mentally trying to fix and make sure that, hey, yeah, there's always more work to do, but the fun side of things is what keeps you mentally healthy, keeps you laughing, keeps you enjoying life, really. I mean, and so that's one mindset and habit that I'm working on, and I've forced myself to make sure to enjoy time with friends and family and make that a priority. So I'll have to put stuff off to the side, and that's going to maybe create a little bit more stress when a deadline's coming up or something. But if there's a show or comedy or concert, I always say, like, nope, I'm going. I'll figure out the work stuff later. Like, it's important to have fun.
We could do a whole nother episode on enjoying the journey. Enjoying the journey, because I resonate so much with that. It's never the destination. There's always another destination. But I think a lot of driven people are always looking for those mile markers and those big milestones. And at the end of the day, it really is all the space in between. It's the process.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that. So I can appreciate that. Last two things here. Is there any particular person that inspires you? Like when you think of like habits and mindsets that you're sort of always like peeking in on or trying to get some like inside scoop as to like how they live their life or like the way that they think about certain situations?
I mean, I brought up my mom. She passed away a few years ago. But that's definitely a person who I've always kept very highly in my mind, and kind of what her habits were and her mindset was with the way she did things. And she was very well respected. A lot of people feared her, but then also people, thought the world of her as well. And so she's definitely one person that has always been one of my mentors. And on the other side, my dad too, he's much more on the side of things where it's like, yeah, let's have some fun. Let's socialize more. Let's go out and enjoy the day. And, we can put off the work a little bit right now. So they've always been a big part of my life. But I kind of brought up autobiography books too. A lot of times, I mean, I tell people they say I don't have any mentors in my life. And so that's why like reading autobiography books is one of the kind of another way that I use to bring people who have good intentions and have been through that struggle and have been able to find their way out of it, because that then gives you motivation to keep pushing through life, keep pushing through your struggles, and see that, you know, if they got out of something, then I can get out of my difficult situation. And so that's one thing that I always try to incorporate into my habits as well, is just finding a new autobiography or somebody to follow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I tell people all the time too. If I think autobiographies and just hearing people's experiences of how they overcame whatever they overcame can be really powerful ways that you can like sort of pick your mentor. You know, I always look at that.
Yeah,
I'm like, "Shoot,
yeah,
I can have multiple mentors, like in any different
yep,
category. You just got to learn enough about them." Um,
yeah, exactly.
Final question here. This is sort of like zooming way out, maybe a little bit past just yourself here. When you think of like all of the challenges we have as a society, so that's obviously there's a lot encompassed in that. Um, is there any like habit or mindset that you just wished upon humanity, that you just wish people could just embrace and like really master so that we could like nudge us all in a more loving and kind direction? Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Oh, I mean, I think it would have to be some sort of movement aspect. I know I'm probably a little biased in that direction, but I mean, it just brings out so much more, I think, feel good endorphins and reducing that cortisol, like you said, and just getting outside. It would just make society a lot better. I think people are going to be more happy towards each other if you got outside. So you should be like, okay, we're going to work today, but hey, this is going to be half an hour you get for lunch, and then another half hour you get to go outside and take a walk or do some sort of movement aspect. And you know, some people are going to be like, just sit on their phone. So it'd be a difficult challenge to try and be like, okay, hey, everybody has to put their phone in the basket and be away from it for a little bit, and then go out and we're gonna do something. But I think it raises so many more of those endorphins and feel good emotions, that and talking with somebody. A lot of times I'll try and have a meeting actually walking with somebody rather than have it on the phone. And so you can actually just, you know, get outside and get the brain flowing a little bit better rather than just having it over the phone or something. So that would be the one thing that if I somehow had a magic wand,
Yeah.
I'd do.
It's true, man. Like, hey, you know, the key to changing the world is making sure that everybody changes themselves. For a lot of the reasons you said, I think if we all became a better version of ourselves, there would be a little bit more loving and kindness and happiness, and that we might be able to project onto the next human being. So, well said.
Yeah, and just that mental health aspect. I mean, a lot of people are struggling with it, and so it's again going back to what I was saying originally, like getting outside and getting some movement and away from all the other chaos that's going on will force people to look more internally and think about themselves, think about their own thoughts, and maybe that those if somebody realizes that they're going down a bad path mentally, then they'll reach out to somebody and maybe have that conversation and sway them into a different direction, rather than if they were just constantly watching social media and not getting any movement, and then their body's feeling even worse, and then they turn to drugs. And so it's two paths that could veer in very different directions. But having that movement and looking internally, I think is a good start to help people improve upon that mental wellness.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, I realize we're at time here. If somebody wants to learn a little bit more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, at Jono Blodgett, or the business side is out Mauka Makai Fitness, and so that's where I'll post a lot of more of like the breathing workshops or breath lessons that we do, and so yeah, reach out.
Awesome. Jono, amazing. I totally see a sequel coming here at one point. We've
All
just
right.
slowly started to unearth who you are and all
We'll
this
we'll
good
do
stuff.
a sequel after your first Spartan race. How about
Well, the
that?
Spartan race is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's May, right? It's next month?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yep.
Lord.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I told Kate, like I said, 70% committed on this podcast. Kate will hear it here. So I'll make the other 30%
All
happen.
right.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think would benefit from it as well.